think it is. That's great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Robinson. I'm the Acting Chief Communications and Public Affairs for Metrolinx. On behalf of Metrolinx, I'd like to welcome everyone here in the audience and viewing online for our Management Town Hall this evening. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. Metrolinx is committed to engaging with and informing our neighbors, our customers, and our community about our progress as we move forward with planning, building, and operating the region's transportation network. We invite all feedback regarding our services and our projects, and I want to thank you again for your interest in joining us here this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to talk about safety and provide a safety briefing in the event we have to evacuate the building here. Safety is our first priority, so let's walk through this together. We have in the event there's a fire alarm, it'll be a two-staged alarm. The first starts out very slowly, and then there'll be instructions to leave the building or stay put. We'll listen to those instructions, and then if there's if the beeping goes fast, it's a fast alarm, then we'll have to evacuate the building.
What about people with wheelchairs because the elevators can't be used? You never bring that up.
That's a good question.
No, you're not going to carry me down because I'm not leaving my $40,000 wheelchair.
I think the important thing is get you down safely, and we'll make sure we get your chair down as well.
How do we do that without elevators? You guys need to think about this accessibility of this. Every meeting you come up with this, you never say anything about people with disabilities.
That's a great challenge. That's a very good challenge. And there are 3 wheel devices that you can use that can climb chairs, stairs, and use and can be used to move a wheelchair down the stairs.
750-pound wheelchair is not going to be able to do that.
On the devices that we're talking about.
We don't leave our devices up here. We're not. How do we have a safe place to stay safe? This is the fire department in this building. Put a safe place for people with disabilities to evacuate to that's safe, like a stairwell or something.
So the most important thing would be getting you out safely, because a wheelchair can be replaced, but a person can't.
No, it cannot be.
Okay.
No, it cannot be because ODSP will not replace it.
Can we make a suggestion? Can we take that away? That's a great challenge. Can we take that away?
Yep, we'll certainly do that. Okay.
And have a strategy for doing this next time around.
Okay. Thank you for that. If we need to leave, we would exit out the front of the lobby. There's stairs right as we walk out through the door here. Stairs we go down onto Front Street, and we're going to gather at the northeast corner of Front and York Street. That would be our muster point. Next slide, please. Who's going to call 911? Raj? Designated first aider would be Mark Childs over here in the front. First aid kit and the AED and the fire extinguisher are located right outside the room here in the kitchen across the way here. Escorting the emergency services and first responders would be Jesselyn Selby at the back, and the head count we had at the beginning of the meeting is 53. So that's our safety briefing, folks. So this event this evening has been designed to allow for as many opportunities for questions and feedback as possible. Those who weren't able to join us here in person had the opportunity to submit questions online, and we've prioritized those into the top 10 questions most voted for. For those of you in the room who would like to ask a question, we've got a microphone over here, and I'd invite you to begin to form a line at any particular point in time, and we'll get to you shortly. For those viewing online, moderators will also ask questions. You also have an opportunity to submit questions online. We're going to rotate through the different types of questions. Obviously, you can take a little bit more priority to the folks in the room, but we will try and get through as many folks as possible who've asked questions of us as well. We scheduled this session to last 1.5 hours, and we're going to commit to take as many questions as possible. And the panel is committed to making short, concise, but important answers to your questions, so we'll get as many as we possibly do. If you have additional questions or require clarity, there's lots of staff in the room, most of whom have got name tags on, and we can certainly take those questions afterwards or have follow-up discussions with you. Additionally, there may be some answers, so again, we can have some further exchange after the meeting or following after that. For those of you who wish to communicate en français, please make yourself known, because we've got French translators who are available. And we may aim to make this meeting as productive as possible. We're committed to hearing your feedback and treating you with respect, and we hope you'll do the same. For each of those questions, we will commit to responding, answering all the questions we've got, and posting them online within a couple of weeks after this evening's event. It's now my pleasure to introduce President and CEO Phil Verster, who will introduce himself and the other Metrolinx panelists here this evening.
Welcome. We've got a sort of introduction from Jamie over there. This is our fourth session.
Fourth.
And the session's extremely useful for us. We learn from the issues you raise. Also gives you an opportunity to ask us questions and for us to give you the answers we've got. So in order to give you the opportunity to give us a sense of what are the issues that bother you, that helps us immensely. It gives us an opportunity as well as an organization, to take actions away from this session and to go and act on that. So we benefit greatly from these sessions, and we hope you do. From the earlier sessions, the 3 previous sessions we've had consistently good feedback about actions and about taking lessons away. And so from our side, thank you very much for everyone that's put the effort in to be here tonight, and for everyone that's put questions through to us. We unfortunately won't necessarily be able to get to all 150 or 200 odd questions that there are, but we'll get through as many as we can. And the prioritization that we've got to the questions are by volume of questions asked and volume of times topics have been raised, but we commit to respond to all of the questions in any case. If we don't respond to them now, we will respond in the time to come. So thank you very much for your participation in this evening's activities. I'll get the team to introduce themselves over here. It's Peter, it's Greg, and it's Leslie, and they'll explain what they do. But the rest of our top team is also here to deal with any questions that the 4 of us won't be dealing with. So it just makes it easier. Most of the questions typically fall in the ambit of what the team in front of you is dealing with. Leslie.
Thanks. Good evening. My name is Leslie Wu. I'm the Chief Planning and Development Officer, and in that role, I have sort of 4 main areas that I am responsible for. Planning, that's pretty clear in terms of transit and transportation planning. Design excellence, this is the physical design, architecture, urban design, and universal and sustainable design, which is a new dedicated stream in our organization. Corporate real estate and land development, and benefits management, which is our new function within the organization that manages the benefits identified in the business cases for the projects that we deliver.
Thank you. My name is Greg Percy. I'm Chief Operating Officer. My group is responsible for delivering service in trains and buses every day. My group also looks after customer service delivery. So it's the communication with customers on a basically now basis. We also have another team that looks after safety oversight for the enterprise. No matter whether it's operations or it's construction, all of that we've rolled up under one VP of safety. And lastly, I have a team that's helping us get ready for the next 3 years as we're ready for major structural change in the organization. We call that business transformation.
My name is Peter Zook. I'm the Chief Capital Officer. That means I build things, I build projects. I try to do that safely. I try to make sure I don't interfere with Greg's service. And I also try to do it in a way that makes sure that we respect the communities which we're serving and which we're building.
Thank you very much, guys.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Invite folks to begin to join and come up to the microphone. But while that's happening, I'll take the first question from our top 10 online. This is coming from Weston. Why is there still no all-day two-way service to Bramalea?
I'll take that one, Jamie. We have introduced some recent service, and we're in discussion on what additional infrastructure is required to enable us to expand service further. Including those discussions are some game-changing discussions with CN, who own the corridor between Bramalea and Georgetown. And as recently as this 2 Fridays ago, we took official ownership of the Guelph subdivision, which goes from Georgetown to Kitchener. So there's a lot happening on the Kitchener corridor, and certainly to fulfill the aspiration of two-way service all day on the Kitchener and other corridors, we are on the road to do that.
Good. Thanks very much, Greg. First question from the mic, sir. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Mike Hutchison.
Step up a little bit. Thanks.
My name is Mike Hutchison. I represent, or I'm representing Caroline Co-op that is in line with the new construction along the East Line. And I'm getting so many questions. When is construction going to start? Everybody is bracing themselves in the neighborhood. Is there such a thing as a firm date on the beginning of construction? And number two, part of this is the sound mitigation that we've been talking about at the CAC meetings. Is that going to be coming before the construction starts or after the construction starts?
Well, as you know, we're doing construction right now in the corridor and very often during the nighttime, and that construction work will continue. What we're doing with that work is making sure that we try to control noise and disruption at source. We are responding when the community indicates to us that maybe we haven't done that as well as we should. In terms of construction, it's not planned to commence construction before late next year, if then. We are looking at what we're going to be delivering there and reviewing when we will need that construction. So there is not yet a firm date when that construction will begin, but we will be continuing the communication with the community where we talk about noise mitigation and the impacts on the community and trying to reach a decision on those things early in the new year.
Okay, so it's almost a year away then.
Yes.
Okay.
Just in order to help with that question, Peter, do you want to just be clear on the early works? Do most of the early works include the sound walls?
The early works do include the sound walls for the most part, and we would anticipate on the project that we're talking about with the E0 railway that sound walls would be a part of the solution for the impacts that we're causing on your community.
In most cases, what we try to do is get some of the early works, meaning before the big change, when you hear about the RER or GO expansion program, try to get most of that work completed to get sound walls or noise-proofing measures in place before the main thrust of the work starts. That's not always possible, depending on what other interim early works we've got, but just to give you a sense of that second half of your question, just want to make sure we give you clarity on that.
I want to know when you're going to start tearing into that hill.
Which hill is that then?
Longboat Avenue.
As I said, not before late next year, and we're still in some flux on when that will happen, but you can be sure that when we do, that is a place where we will be providing noise mitigation measures either by way of sound walls or by way of noise mitigation in the homes that are affected.
Before.
Yes.
Thank you for the question. Next question over here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I got to apologize for bursting out during the emergency thing, but I want to explain something. Every single one of your meetings, board meetings, these meetings, even the accessibility forums at different events, such as Hamilton tomorrow night, you guys mentioned the emergency plan. But in that emergency plan, you absolutely neglect people that are in wheelchairs, people that are blind and low vision, and also people that are hard of hearing or deaf. If people tell me one more time that this is a heritage building and you can't do this stuff, and if one more person tells me that I have to leave my wheelchair, none of you would leave without your underwear, would you? None of you would leave without your shoes. None of you would leave without your glasses. So why should you request that people in wheelchairs be without our wheelchairs when they can't be replaced if you're on ODSP? That's point one. Point two, and I'm going to be very quick when I say this. If one more bus driver tells me that my husband and I cannot ride 2 for 1 on my Presto card because we're both legally blind, I am going to flip. I recently had an episode between Square One and Union Station. I was discriminated against in various ways. I had to transfer from my wheelchair into a seat because the seat on the bus could not be moved and was broken And that puts my safety at risk. It puts the safety of everyone on that vehicle at risk because this wheelchair was not secured. And number 3, why is it the trips from Square One to Union Station are not Alexander Dennis buses already, aka low floor, aka the only vehicles that should be used on major routes, especially because you guys know, you have to know by now, that there's people with disabilities that ride these routes. Point 3, why haven't you fessed up to the fact that Presto is still a fail for those of us that are legally blind or blind? And that a lot of the platforms at Union Station, actually all the platforms at Union Station, are dangerous for people with low vision and in wheelchairs. There's no high contrast railings on any of your train cars, especially the accessibility coaches. There is no braille. And your website is still inaccessible for those of us with screen readers, especially the Presto side. And the attitude I get, I don't care if people want to write me a ticket. I will put this publicly, and I will say this now, and I'm not the only one that's doing this. There are people that are low vision, legally blind, and totally blind who absolutely refuse to pay fare on the trains. The reason? How dare you expect us to go to a manned train station to be able to deal with our Presto? We have been promised for so many years, since paper tickets were still around, since I could still buy a 10 ride from Hamilton to Toronto, and it would go, once it stopped going, you turn it around, pop it back in. Once it stops, you go buy a new one. Simple. Why is it that people with low vision, people who are legally blind, people that are totally blind, especially those of us with multiple disabilities, how dare you discriminate against us? Because that's what you're doing. These machines at Union, the great big white ones where you're supposed to use low vision and the corners and pick your ticket, takes 10 minutes to buy a ticket. And if you screw up once, you're back to the start. You guys need to get your act together. Phil, I'm holding you to account. You have fought for accessibility in several ways. You need to do better. Every single one of you need to do better. Why is it that when Sylvan was here, before he retired, he went to the shows, People in Motion, Abilities Expo, he tried to fight for accessibility. He was blockaded every time. Why are the accessibility meetings closed? Why aren't they televised? Why are your board meetings? Why isn't there automatically ASL? American Sign Language, for those that don't know. Why is it that in your very basic emergency preparedness plan, there's nothing that gives us the dignity to stay in our chairs? Go Transit and Metrolinx, you need to get your act together, because Presto is an epic fail. People with low vision and blind have said this for years and years and years and years. Why is it we only have one set of screens at Union Station that are lowered? Why is it there's no wayfinding pathways at Union Station? Thank you.
You've raised some tremendous issues. Can we get the panel that'd like to respond? Phil?
So can I start by saying thank you very much? That is really much appreciated. And it puts me to shame to say I should have thought of this. I should have thought of especially the emergency exit arrangement. And I think your challenge to us is great.
My name is Emily Daigle, and I will hold you to account like I do TTC. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Emily. So what we will do is we will take we'll take especially your emergency challenge. We'll take that as a matter of urgency. We'll take that away. But the list of issues that you've raised are all important, and I think we need to get a really key program on our side, an accessibility-oriented program on our side, to incorporate those issues. We do have a very strong accessibility program, but the program is not delivering, clearly then, not delivering what we need to deliver to make sure we satisfy a wider community of people with accessibility needs. And we take that away very clearly. I am intrigued if any of our team want to respond. Do you want to respond from a Presto angle, Annalise?
Speak to a bit of it. Sorry. I'm Annalise. Hi. So I can speak to a little bit of it. So all of the newer Presto cards have tactile.
It's a P one way, a number sign the other way. It doesn't tell us the number on the card. It doesn't give us the proper information on it.
Yeah, so that's fair. I was going to say, I think I've got a couple of takeaways. The ticket vending machines, for sure. There's a program to replace them, and making sure that we replace them with things that features that are accessible, ensure good usage for everyone is important. I have a bunch of takeaways for this. My understanding actually was that the website was adaptive, and so if the most recent updates aren't doing that, I have to go digging.
Register when you can't read what's on your card, the number on your card. How can you register it?
Okay. I think, Emily, point's well made. And I think what would be good if, and I think this is one of the cases where we would really welcome a more thorough conversation about all of the concerns. I do think there's a separate challenge for what we deal with on our design choices and the accessibility committees that we have going and that are up and running, and what are we missing in those accessibility meetings so that we don't get these why aren't we picking up on these messages sooner? So maybe you'd like to respond to that, Leslie?
So thank you, and I appreciate you setting those out. And I will take those to heart. I'm going to go back to the team that run the meetings to understand what it is, the criteria that they have put that are barriers for others. And we will make extra special care, because I think we had tried in wherever we can when we had public meetings to make sure they're fully accessible for those. But obviously we have fallen short on that front. So we will, that's a specific takeaway. I think there's another takeaway for me and my team, which is with regards to which is an ongoing transformation of the whole network and the system and our stations around the buildings, the interiors, and moving of signage and the correct signage. That has been in play, but it's taking longer than anybody would like. So we'll see how we can make a push on that. And I know Greg's going to talk about the buses themselves.
Yeah, Greg, and on the buses, I'd like to get Emily's specific feedback on what went on in that particular incident where this chair is not capable of being moved and accommodating a wheelchair. Can you just pick up on that, as well as Alexander Dennis bus?
So let me speak first to the Alexander Dennis. We have, I love them too. We have a fleet of about 550 buses. About half are the double decks by Alexander Dennis and half are the single decks. So we allocate bus capacity by quarter, by density of ridership. So it's done with some science. So the reason we got the double deck buses because they are lower, easier deployment, easier for you, but we don't have enough to serve the entire network. We have approximately 2,500 trips a day. We cannot put a double-deck bus in every one, so we allocate accordingly to maximize our passenger ridership. So it's that simple an explanation.
Scarborough to Union should be one of those major trips.
We have a team that digs really deep on that kind of stuff, and I default to them because I do trust them that they would make those decisions. So I note that your love for the double-deck bus, and I know why. So that's great. And the good news is we're taking receipt of more every single month. So. And at some point, they will be by far the vast component of our fleet. So that's good news for you. That specific incident, I'm actually not aware of that. That surprised me and disappoints me at the same time. So I will go back and dig deeper into that. Okay? If you can give me a rough idea of dates and so forth, then that helps me narrow it down. But we will follow up because I found that unusual.
So Emily, can I just say again, thank you very much for that.
I'll be here.
And thanks for your passion you put into that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Folks, we're going to go to the next top 10 question that came in online. So it's regarding new trains, and it's coming from Kevin. When will the public find out details about the new GO trains for Regional Express Rail or GO expansion? When will the public see the prototype, electric hydrogen locomotives and DMUs? Which lines will they run on?
Well, the way this will work is that's a decision that will be made by the market that responds to our request for train service in our upcoming Encore procurement. In that, we're going to be telling the market what it is that we want them to deliver, how many seats, and something about the quality of it, and leaving it to them to decide whether those trains would be electrified trains by catenary electric, or whether it would be electrified trains by hydrogen, which is possible because the competition is open to both of them. So we're going to tell them generally the quality that we want, leave that decision to the market as to the specific way they meet that. The one thing we're sure of is that we're going to make sure that it is quality service for our customers.
Thanks very much, Peter. Next question from the audience. Sir.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm from the NATO Council of Canada. I'm a research analyst there. We write about international, national, and domestic safety, but I've never had to write anything on the go, so that means a good thing, because I've never felt threatened or particularly in danger, so I've never written a report about the go. I'm a 10-year GO train rider since the days of my University of Toronto years. I've always taken the Lakeshore West train, going from Oakville to Union Station for the last 10 years. Unfortunately, the worst experience I've had was when it was a particularly windy day, there were some thunderstorms, and a light went out in Miracle Station, I believe, when I was leaving from Union Station to go to Oakville, to go home. And my particular train was stuck in between Union and Exhibition for an hour. This was quite an infamous incident, I'm sure you guys are aware. And all the Uber prices were really going up that evening, and there were hundreds of people on that particular train stuck for an hour. I understand, as somebody that writes about public safety, especially at a national level, I understand that not all accidents can be prepared for. I understand, I'm sure you guys do drills and you guys have practices, but not everything can be accounted for. And that particular night was particularly windy and particularly stormy, so I understand that. But did you develop new policies or new practices to prevent that from happening again? But other than the accident, I commend you for creating a safe environment.
Thank you for the question.
I appreciate the observation of safety, because we take significant pride in that. That's our highest priority. You're talking about July 16th.
Yes, that is correct. It would have been in the summer.
It's indelibly imprinted on my mind, and I was on one of those trains also. I also live on the Lakeshore West Corridor. That particular night, we had a lightning strike in what we call a signals bungalow near our Obico station. And they did significant damage, and it was actually unsafe to go in and repair the damage until the lightning was finished. But in that particular case, that limited the track access from 3 to 2, actually from 3 to 1. And then there was an error in aligning the trains, so we actually had a suspension of the corridor briefly. The net result was delays, to significant delays of an hour. Yes. So we have adjusted process to try to reduce that. When we do get Mother Nature intervening, that is a challenge. And we try to respond quickly to that, whether it's flood, storm, pestilence, or whatever. We do try to get on top of that and recover quickly. We actually measure quite seriously the delay times for those types of trains, because it's our job to reduce those delay times, because we want to get everybody home and we want to get them home safely. So I appreciate you raising that, and that was really a pivotal date for us to do a lot of different things. So thanks for raising that.
Did you have any specifics about any new policies you put in, or are they still work in progress?
No. We've done all the debriefs on that. For example, the switch that was misaligned, that actually reduced us from 3 to 1 track and then to 0. So we have retrained our crew. That was a unique switch that we actually had one put into our training area. So we have crews go out and practice pulling that switch to make sure they do it properly. Sometimes we have a lot of different switches, and sometimes crew do not encounter them as often as they do, and they forget their original training. In this case, it was unique enough that we actually had one put in for simulation practice, and they do that, and they've all had exposure to that now. There are other operational procedures that we tweaked to reduce the probability and then for the impact of that also. I won't bore you with them, but they trust me when I say it was a very pivotal moment for us operationally.
Yes, it was a pivotal moment for me too.
Yeah, I hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the
Daniel,
question.
Thank you.
Daniel, just before you go, just another part of the question. Greg, just help me with this. is it fair to say the signaling equipment that was knocked out are pretty old type of equipment, and with some of the upgrades that we're doing in the GO expansion would put us to new type of signaling bungalows which will have a significantly lower risk of this type of outage?
That is fair to say. When we acquired our rail corridor over a period of 5 years, we inherited signal systems of different ages. And we are, through the RER program, investing in getting commonality of the signal design, and in so doing, getting rid of the aged switches and signals. That will end up with more consistency and better customer service overall across all our corridors.
Right. And the signaling system really steers the trains or controls them. So the signaling system is out. It's like your steering is gone. But the new part of upgrading the capital asset base or the infrastructure will avoid the exposure the older equipment had to lightning strike type risks.
I see. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daniel.
For those of you who's just joined us, either in the audience or online, thank you for joining the Metrolinx Management Town Hall. My name is Jamie Robinson from Metrolinx. We're about a third of the way through our program for this evening. We've got a panel from Metrolinx who's taking questions that are previously submitted online from the audience and that are coming in from our live stream as well. I'm going to invite the next question from the live stream from the folks who are watching from home. Why does GO Bus route number 40 service Vaughan at Highway 407 station, Richmond Hill at Richmond Hill Centre, but not Markham at Unionville GO? It is a major inconvenience for the residents of Markham to take the transit to the airport. We need to take at least 30 minutes more to get to go to Richmond Hill Centre instead of Unionville GO station.
So that's a great question, and I'm going to fess up that it's micro enough that I don't have that immediate answer, but I'd be happy to take that back. That is a specific route, but certainly it's not our intent to add time into your transit, and we will take a look at that and see what we can do with it. But certainly the airport hub is a major hub for us, and we try to be efficient both in and out from wherever in the GTA. So we'll certainly take this down and find a way to get back to you if there's a way to identify who you are.
We can say things like when these routes are planned, there's careful attention is given to how many customers travel and what the demand is. And while we can connect many different locations, we typically try and focus on those links that are the most effective and efficient, and at the same time the shortest, and create the most number of journeys. Because if we run buses on routes that are less effective, those buses are in effect unavailable for those places where there are higher demand.
Well, that's exactly what we do. And when we make dramatic service changes or even minor ones, we do a risk assessment, impact on community, impact on average trip time, ridership potential, all that stuff become driving variables to making those routing decisions. As I said earlier, we run 2,500 bus routes per day. And we try to balance that. We take a system view of that. We don't do a capacity assessment by quarter. We look across the system for efficiencies and to reduce, frankly, inconvenience to the customer. So I'm intrigued by the question that was tabled, and certainly we'll probe into that in more detail.
Great. Thanks for that, Greg. I'd like to invite next question from our audience.
Yes, my name is April Engelberg. I live in this area, Spadina, Fort York, which is growing 4 times faster than any other area of Toronto. I'm looking at 2 problems and hoping that Metrolinx can fix them. So the first one is the extreme congestion that we have in this area. The King streetcar is over congested. Every morning I usually get on about the 3rd one that passes me, and so on. On the other hand, we have the Union Pearson Express train, which we all know didn't work out as it was originally envisioned, that being, a fancy, expensive train to the airport. Instead, fares were lowered. It was encouraged to be used as a commuter train. So what I'm asking is, would you guys consider creating a stop on the Union Pearson Express at Liberty Village, where there's already the approved Smart Track station? I think you guys know where I'm talking about. That could get people from Liberty Village to Union Station in 5 minutes and get those people off the streetcar. It seems like since it would be, a very long time till the downtown relief line could ever extend west of University, this is a fast solution. It gets more people riding the Union Pearson Express. We don't know what the loss is on revenue currently for the Union Pearson Express. But anyway, would you guys consider this solution, the Union Pearson Express stop at Liberty Village?
Thanks for your question.
So, April, I'll take that one. Liberty Village is most definitely a station that is in need of getting built for the City of Toronto. There are a couple of stations like that. You go slightly further towards on the Lakeshore West, and you get to a place like Park Lawn. Look at St. Clair. You look at the East Harbour side and to Gerrard. There are more stations that we need to build on the GO lines. That's absolutely essential. So while you ask the question as if it's up express, we probably want to suggest to you that the need for GO services coming into the city and into Union to have stops within the city itself as the two benefits that you've identified. It provides an alternative mode to the TTC infrastructure, which in many cases is already very busy, and serves, when you have like a streetcar or an LRT, it serves a different type of point-to-point commute, while the commute that you refer to, which is Liberty Village into Union, it's a different destination, and that's why Liberty Village is one of the locations where a business case for a station there makes absolute sense. Now, the minister has this week announced strategy in terms of transit-oriented development, whereby we are setting about working with developers to build these stations as quickly as possible and for the best possible value to the taxpayer. So answer to your question is, are we considering a station in Liberty Village? Answer is yes. That station would even be better served once we implement the train services that will come from GO expansion. So not only will the benefit be the existing sort of train service plan with stops at Liberty Village, but there are more services that will run as we have the GO expansion to follow. And it's part of a bigger expansion for Toronto. A last thought, there's even more that can be done here when we think about what fares we charge for GO services relative to fares we charge on TTC services as well. That can act as an even higher incentive in time. And we're considering all of those options. On Liberty Village, we have an expressed opinion from Metrolinx side out there that we're open for business and we're very keen to build a station there.
Okay, so I understand your answer is that you're keen to build a GO station at Liberty Village, that being part of Smart Track, as best I understand it, but not the Union Pearson Express train stop, because the reason why I'm saying it is this is already a train that already runs, and it currently just bypasses Liberty Village, where there's significant population and would be significant demand to ride. That's why.
So as we step up services on GO, the same number of services, even more, would be able to serve something like a station at Liberty Village. So the issue here is not so much what service we stop, it's rather the issue is how quickly can we get a station built.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, April. Third top 10 question. How is Metrolinx supporting active and sustainable school travel? Is this for Leslie?
Yes, happy. This is a very, first of all, thank you to if I can pronounce it correctly, Chemosite, because there's a lot of good information that follows the question around the data, which basically the data is showing that there are quite a number of kids who are currently driven to schools on short trips, and parents who would like to have their kids walk to school, but the conditions are not right. And we recognize that because that's linked to the number of trips and the length of trips happening in the region in general. So the work that we have been doing has been mostly with the Ministry of Education and the school boards to work with them to help them understand all the advantages and benefits of walking as a trip, as a mode of getting to school. And we have been working with them on and supporting a number of pilots with the school boards, with parent groups and so forth. And the uptake has been positive and been growing because more than anything, there's some cases where there's a need for better sidewalks and signage and so forth, but a lot of the time it's an attitude and information to help people understand that walking to school is as viable, especially for very short distances.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. Next question from the audience, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to get right to my question and then mention a very specific example because I know Jamie wants to get to lots of questions tonight, so I'll be brief.
Don't forget your name.
Chris, hi. So with the recent revision to Metrolinx's mandate, I'm wondering if cycling and walking can still be considered through Metrolinx's existing safety lens. And I've been very impressed, and obviously more work to do in terms of the priority that Metrolinx has put on safety and how often Phil and the team mentions it. And my specific example is Malton Station on the Kitchener line has an exciting potential for improving the train local bus experience. Right now I have to walk to catch local buses at Derry Road, and I have to go through the station property. There's no dedicated sidewalk. I've had instances where drivers who are rushing to get out of the parking lot don't see me. I'm sure as part of GO expansion, you're already considering improvements to Malton Station, such as a dedicated sidewalk. Right now there's a ditch, which is fine for me. You know, just to show that accessibility issues can be far-reaching. My brother 2 years ago was in a car accident, was temporarily in a wheelchair, and we had to navigate Union Station. So as an able-bodied person, I was able to get his perspective. So it really is universal, and I think there is an exciting potential so that there's great linkages between GO Train customers and local transit customers. And through a safety lens of cycling and walking, I think it could be a really exciting combination.
Thanks, Chris.
So maybe I'll start and then others will add in. Just on the first part of your question with regards to the role of different modes in active transportation, it's a really critical aspect of access to our station and bus terminals. And so the integration of how the connectivity, walking, cycling is still a very important part of the work we do. So on that front. And so on the safety facet of access and accessibility, we see them as a sort of a whole complement, and we think about them together so that when we're designing and access to our station, when we work with municipalities about bike paths, sidewalks, roads, ride share, car share, it's a combination of that it's a human scale, that it is safe, that the intermingling between the different modes is not designed in a way that disbenefits people traveling. And so it is a very integrated piece, and so it is still very important to us and still critical to the success of the whole system.
Anybody else want to add on to what Leslie said? Great, thank you. I'm going to take another question from our live stream. Could you explain any efforts to fare integrate for the transfer for all, could you explain any efforts to fare integrate for the transfer of all York U buses to Highway 407 station? This is coming from Mark.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the question. So I might interpret the question incorrectly, so hopefully I'll... so what I think the question is from Mark is how are we undertaking fare integration for our buses, for customers who are on our buses transferring from York University to the new Highway 407 station, which is where the new Spadina subway is. Correct. So in January this year, we, with the City of Toronto, instituted a discount double fare, which is $1.50 in either direction for passengers moving between GO and the TTC. And that is applies to all travelers across the whole of Toronto and the region, which would include York University students. And then GO offers to post-secondary students our post-secondary discount, so that still applies to students. And then we continue to work with the municipalities on advancing further fare integration. Some of you may or may not know, in the last 2 or 3 years, we did an extensive amount of work on fare integration across the region, which did result in the discount double fare. It identified a number of other elements for improving fare integration on the foundation of the Presto card as the mode to enable fare integration. So there are a lot of pieces that are underway, and the discount double fare does support that transfer.
Great.
I think I can put context of this question.
Sure.
It's because I believe that all buses that right now going to York University going to go to Highway 407. So people are concerned they have to pay twice.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, so Jamie, are you going to respond to that?
So yeah, the issue that's been recently announced with Metrolinx as of January not taking the GO buses onto the York U campus, we recognize that that's an issue that's of concern to students and faculty at York University. It was always planned that once the two stops that were opened up on Line 1, both at Highway 407 and at Downsview Park, that shortly after that, that Metrolinx would no longer be serving the York University campus. The York University themselves have got a real interest in doing development, things like that in the common, and so they had asked Metrolinx to consider and actually to leave the campus, and we are looking at that towards June of next year. We did have a look at what could be accommodated between January and June if there was an option to stay on the campus, how we would make that work, and we looked at that very carefully, very seriously, and it was a safety issue that was there. So it was a lot of ongoing discussions between York University and Metrolinx, and again, keeping back to the fundamental plan was to always exit the campus and to just take the GO buses straight into Highway 407. So we regret that this is an issue of concern to the York University students and faculty, but that's the way the situation stands.
Okay, can I just add to that? Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the original planned move of the buses off the campus was about a year ago.
Correct.
And we stayed longer on campus. We got very clear guidance from the university that they wanted us to be off that commons area and that we cannot continue to use the commons area. And when there was no safe alternative to drop passengers and our customers and to ensure their safety after a journey, we had no choice to move, and that is why we have moved. And I think it's really important to get that clarity.
Okay. Thank you.
What I'm saying is very clearly that we've worked with the university all along very intensely, and we had a very clear indication given to us that we had to be off the campus by January. And we made plans, and we did the plans, and we looked at alternatives for to stop on the commons. There weren't any alternatives. We made that really clear, and then made it very clear that if there aren't any alternatives and we have to be off the commons, we will go to Highway 407.
Imagine how much worse it would have been without the co-share.
Yes. Yes.
Imagine how much better it would have been if we had full fare integration.
What does full fare integration mean, everyone? Full fare integration.
Yes. So you're right. You're right. There are two worlds here, and in terms of
halfway there, so
yeah, it's a start.
We'll get the rest of the way there soon.
Yes, we'll work at that. Yeah. We'll work at that.
Okay. Next question from the audience, sir.
Hello, my name is Nima. First off, thank you very much for holding such an event. It feels amazing.
No, Nima, and you're welcome. Welcome to be here.
Thank you. It's my first time. I find it amazing. So I'm a founder of a technology company. We work with the hop-on, hop-off buses, tourism hop-on, hop-off buses, and we bring augmented reality technology to them. We initially launched our technology in the Berlin, Germany. We are Toronto-based. And what our company does is when the passengers in the vehicles look through their phones, we inform them of the information about the places they're passing by. If there are restaurants, there are deals happening, reviews. And I think I was one of the people who got mostly glad about the new Presto policy of hop on, hop off, because it enables us to bring the same thing to Presto as well. My main question, which I was hoping to get as much opinion from the panel as well as the team, was to hear about the reasons for such a shift, which I find amazing. But like, what were the main reasons? What were the motives? And whether Presto is open, Presto Metrolinx is open for partnerships with local companies.
Let's start with the last part of the question.
Sure.
So the answer to that is yes, 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 and yes. So we definitely, and this augmented reality fits quite neatly in with something that we have to turn our information that we share with customers into something that's much more informative than just saying you have now arrived at Rouge Hill or you've now arrived at Oshawa. So So there could be a really, we are very keen on finding collaboration and options to collaborate with any local enterprises that can come up with ideas
We're
like
the only
that.
company in the world who's capable of doing this technology. So
That's okay, and I think the connection with Annalise would be a really important one. The fair choice is an interesting one, and I think you'll continue to see fair products that we use, us and the city, and Annalise will explain to you the history behind the transfer. But the fair product issue is as important as what we offer people as what we tell people, and so the background behind it has come very much from the city, hasn't it?
Yeah, maybe I'll speak 2 seconds to the past and then to the future because both are interesting. So from a looking backwards perspective, Toronto, the City of Toronto, TTC, was the, as you know, with their legacy Fair Media, had a direction-based transfer, and part of Presto coming on was to provide technology that supported the same fair policy. So that fair policy was built into Presto and used for a couple of years since the beginning and until now, the end of August. In the meantime, all of the other transit agencies who have flat fare, or actually who participate in Presto, so all 10 other agencies do allow for hop-on, hop-off, either 2 or 3 hour transfers, and that has been consistent throughout the GTHA in Ottawa. So Toronto was actually the anomaly. So the system already incorporated it in the past, more recent past, and there was finally a policy decision to align to that. And I think in part because of the benefit that it brings to riders in terms of being able to give folks more flexibility. You can get on, get off, do your shopping, and get back on a streetcar, subway, or bus and not have to pay again. So we were delighted that we now have both consistency amongst all the 11 agencies, but also that this is of great benefit and hopefully that more people take transit because it's cheaper and more convenient. On the question of integrating with other technologies, we to Phil's point, we are incredibly interested. We've just spent the past 5 or 6 months redoing the Presto strategy and thinking about the future of how we integrate payments and in fact use payments to help encourage people to take transit more, and things like what you offer, so let's exchange cards afterwards, are of great interest. And in fact, we've started doing some market soundings to see how we can use the app, which is the first phase is coming out shortly in terms of just being able to manage your account, but seeing that as the first phase in what we can do, which is much more exciting, which eventually adds in trip planning, trip alerts, loyalty, more information, so that it makes people be able to use transit and other adjacent modes like bike share and so on in a more convenient and exciting way, because ultimately the goal is to get people out of their cars and into transit. So we're very excited. We don't have the full roadmap completely ironed out, but the intent is to move into all these things as we go forward and not wait for everything to be ready, but to keep updating and to keep kind of augmenting the service that we provide so that we can keep up with the times.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Annalise. We're going to go to the next top number 4 of our top 10 questions. What is the status of all-day service on the Kitchener line? There's a lot more detail behind that. I can read a little bit. You want me to read a little bit more to that says?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
So we've shared fairly publicly, and we'll do it now again and share very honestly and publicly with you that we've worked very closely with CN. We have reached a broad agreement with CN on the principles along which we will extend services on the CN infrastructure, and on both the Kitchener and Niagara lines and any other CN line. We are busy planning our service expansion on that basis. And so we would expect to see in the very near future more information of that in the public domain. And over a period of time, we will be talking about how do we ramp up those services and get those services to extend to places that we've had limitations in terms of services before. So unfortunately, at this time, we'd like to just suggest that in the next couple of weeks, sort of watch this space, and we'll give more information on where we are going with services towards Hamilton, Niagara, as well as towards the region of Waterloo.
Thanks, Phil. Next question from the audience.
I'm Steve Monroe, for anybody who doesn't know me. About a week ago, you and I and various others were at the Board of Trade for a session on transit, and there was a kind of surreal pair of statements. The session began with what was called, I think, a fireside chat with 3 new ministers, including your newly minted Minister of Transportation, who created quite a stir, at least among the media, announcing that there were going to be subways to Peel, York, and Durham regions. It was only about an hour later when Phil Verster, talking in his panel, talked about the need for good business cases and business studies, and the idea that Metrolinx, free of political interference, ho ho ho, would review proposals under the cold light of fiscal responsibility. I was intrigued. There was not wild laughter in the room at the time, but I'm asking the question now: how can you reconcile the very political environment, certainly which the new Metrolinx Act implies, with a business-like environment where you produce a regional transportation plan based on planning and studies and what have you, only to have lines drawn on the map by your minister?
Thank you, Steve.
Steve, it's always good to talk to you. Yeah? It's always good to hear you ask the same question in 3 different ways every time. So we'll go through the answer again. This consistency is good. So hopefully you find
you have a new minister since the last time.
Yeah, yes, the world does change. So Steve, we're very, very clear about this, and I'll just forgive me if I just walk through the same logic again. We will publish our business cases, and we do publish our business cases. Our business cases published, and our assumptions around our business cases that underpins our reasoning, we make public, and we'll continue to do that. And it is our role to come up with the facts of the matter, and the facts of the matter. And while I appreciate the sound effects and everything you've added in as part of your question, I'll be the first to say that the quality of our business cases now is streets better than what it was a year and a half ago. And all credit to Leslie and her team for the improvements that they've made. I will also be the first one to say to you that there are very clear examples of where business cases, and that's true across the world, where business cases are considered, as they should be, I'll say this, very clear, as they should be, a part of the spectrum of making the decision. A business case that we present for transit options does exactly that. It says, what are the transit economics? What's the transit payback? What are the benefits and what are the costs associated with a transit solution? It does not attempt and cannot attempt to take the wider economic benefits, the multiplier effect from how people spend money and what it does for local community. It doesn't take that into consideration. It doesn't take strategic contextual considerations, such as there's a neighborhood here which is disenfranchised because they're not properly connected to the rest of the city. It doesn't take that into consideration. There are other reasons why elected officials decide where to spend the money that taxpayers pay. It is never intended, I would say, never intended for Metrolinx to have autonomous view on our priorities. We said is where money must be spent. That's why what we provide is a fact-based contribution to that decision-making process. And then, in the end, the elected officials are there to decide and to get elected based on the priorities that they want to make part of their policy and they want to deliver. So we will continue to do that, and whatever decisions get made will be open to public scrutiny by you, the media, the people out there. So that formula hasn't really changed. And I think that formula is true for wherever you go in the world. organizations say this is what will be a good transit investment. Politicians decide where the money goes. And they do that not just for transit, they do that for any other public expenditure. They make decisions, they get advice, they make decisions on where they want to spend it. So it's, I think we keep, and it
begs the question.
No, let me just follow, Steve. Let me just follow through. It's good you guys keep on challenging us, and I you know me. I welcome the question, and I will continuously contextualize it and try and give you as clear an answer as possible. You know, in the world we live out there, this is the same thing that happens everywhere. So, not that there's anything wrong with it. That's just the way democracy works.
Steve, thanks for your question. We're going to move along and take the next question.
Steve, I'll catch you again afterwards. We can talk afterwards, yeah.
From the live stream. When is Metrolinx reinstating the EV chargers in your parking lots? This is a question coming from Supra. Electrical vehicle chargers in our parking lots. Who would like to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at the. There's been no system-wide decision to remove EV chargers in parking lots. In fact, we're looking at ways to increase those. So I need a little more specifics as to where this was done, because it actually goes in the opposite direction of where we are. So
I think it's probably, yeah. I'm not aware of where we've taken it out.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so we're about 2/3 of the way through our program this evening, folks. Again, we're taking questions from the audience online and from questions that were submitted beforehand. We'll take the next question from the audience.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Carol Baker, and I have actually just a few positive comments first. So the quiet zone on the trains, upper level, is great. And dogs on the train is great. And free parking, don't ever change that. And then I just have a very specific sort of question and then a general thing. Okay. So I ride the Lakeshore East line, generally twice a day, every day. And it's a grind, but it's not as bad as the TTC. The GO train is better than the TTC still. And at Scarborough Station, I don't understand why the Stouffville line cannot be better integrated into, into Scarborough Station, where there's often, especially when there's delays and problems, and that Stouffville train will not stop to alleviate, let's say, a 20-minute delay. That's really that's very cruel. So that integration piece, I don't understand. And that the bigger picture is rush hour is the problem, right? Union Station is a disaster. The renovations are, so far delayed, so over budget. It's a nightmare during rush hour. There's lineups for the Presto machines that will cause you to miss your train. It's just insane, the congestion. And the prices we pay for GO Transit, there's no way that we shouldn't be getting seats, that we should be standing, but this is the reality of Scarborough, Danforth. So it's wonderful that you do all this regional expansion, this all-day service stuff to Kitchener, but the rush hour is a problem, and how can it ever be solved? And I got really excited when there was some announcement about 15-minute trains on the Lakeshore line, but I think that was just a joke or something, because there's no 15-minute trains during rush hour or any other time, I don't think. But was that did I just imagine that? I thought I even saw a sign at Danforth saying 15-minute trains. So what was that all about? Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
So Carol, we'll pick up on two, and Leslie will talk to you about the Scarborough grade separation that we are building. So the bottleneck you've identified on the Stouffville line is very, very real, and we're going to spend sort of a small fortune to fix that, and it's going to cost a lot of money, but fixing that fixes the flow from the Stouffville line into downtown forever and a day, and it gives a lot of capacity, and it's necessary to build what we call a grade separation, basically a big bridge. Or it could be that we do a dive under, but that's going to be dependent on how we do stuff, so we'll do that. And Greg will respond to your question on frequency and 15-minute service, which we've implemented. The 15-minute service, already we run a 15-minute service in the peak, depending on what stops you're on. But the 15-minute service we added is quite a lot of those services went into the off-peak. But Greg will explain that to you. But Leslie will talk about Scarborough first.
So just very quickly, the ideal situation is that the trains between Stouffville and Lakeshore are smoothly flowing, able to kind of sync one behind the other. And in fact, if there is a delay at one point on the Lakeshore line, Stouffville, which may have been going past that station, can stop. The barrier is actually a physical barrier and constraint, and the grade separation that Phil is talking about, which is literally to separate the corridor and give the Stouffville line a more free-flowing entry into the Lakeshore corridor, will enable us to have more flexibility to do what, just as you described, which is, because it has the capacity to pick up when and give us more, I guess the word is redundancy in the system, but right now that constraints like a pinch point. And so part of the Go Expansion program will begin to address that issue, whether we do it as a trench, a down under, that's what we're working through now. So that is part of the broader plan that's in play.
So I'll speak to the frequency of service and the investment in the corridor that will enable more service. What we've done in the last year, we've sent teams in to upgrade the crossovers, the switches, track and tie. Actually, it's sort of an extreme makeover. And the whole intention of doing that is to improve the service reliability of the infrastructure. So that's step one. And then you balance out addition of new service based on, we have a system-wide look at how we add more service. And we at some point will add it everywhere, but we have to do it with some logic to it. But I want to speak to the point that, frankly, the Lakeshore East, because of our infrastructure build, I don't think we've serviced that corridor and our customers on that corridor to the level that they deserve. Clearly the investment we've made will increase that level of service and the reliability. But I'm not particularly proud of the level of service that it has received for the past basically 9 months. And it's the intention.
Punctuality.
I'm talking about punctuality and reliability, because I think it's really important that and we've gotten used to our customers building our transit time into their daily lives. That's actually, it's both a positive and a negative, but we'll dwell on the positive on that. So we need to do better, and I think that it's a really good start, the kind of work that's being done and the investments made to get that reliability back to where it used to be. And I think it'll sustain that for quite a while. So I look forward to giving you better service on that corridor and with higher frequency as well.
Greg, can you talk about the service every 15 minutes and perhaps stop Carol's from an...
So we balance the service. So both Lakeshore East and West have 15 minutes or better service in the rush hours. And in the off-peak, in the evenings and the weekends, it's a different level of service. We're mixing that up with 30-minute service, except during construction, where for the last, I think it's 8 of the last 9 weekends, we've been doing construction there on bridges, replacement, that kind of stuff. So we've gone to hourly service. But 15-minute service is a target. It's an aspiration, and it's one that we know we can do because we do it in the rush hours today.
I think it's the express trains that are the problem. So the state stops that are closer to Union are not benefiting as much, are not benefiting.
That's right. And that's the same Lakeshore East and West, for sure. So where the express service is, for example, I use the Lakeshore West every day. And we have express service from Clarkson in. So if you are between Clarkson and Union, you don't get the express service, right? So that's all-stop service. And most of the all-stop trains we run after rush hour. We sprinkle a few in the between so that we can service those customers. But it's once rush hour is over in the morning, which is usually around 9:30, then we go to an all-stop service, as you probably know. And then we start up the express again for the afternoon rush hour, say around 3 o'clock. So you're right. That's a good observation, but it's how we best conserve the quarter at this point because we're trying to serve the majority, and that seems to work now. But hold me to account on upping your service level and reliability over the next year.
Carol, and then just one more point. In the next week or so, our business case for the Go expansion is going to be published, and it's going to be pretty much in the public domain. There's a particular sheet in there somewhere, I can't remember the page number, that shows how the frequency trains per hour increases in the next couple of years as part of Go expansion. Probably, if you can download it for free and stuff like that, we're going to have a look at that and then come back next time we can talk about it again. But the service on both Lakeshore West and East will continue to increase as we add more capacity in the years to come.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Carol. Guys, we've got a bunch of people lined up here, so I'm going to try and, if we can go for short questions, brief questions from the audience, and briefer answers from the panelists.
Okay.
That'd be great. I want to get as many questions as we can for folks who have taken the time to come out this evening.
Hello there. This is Alex Rampal from Toronto, and I was looking at ways if you can make a solution of making looking at cashless transit fare systems in the future. The reason why I'm calling on several transit systems to go cashless in the future is because it would cut down fare disputes, it would cut down on those driver assaults or other threats to drivers of being assaulted. Everyone, if you can listen to me, everyone, this is why I'm calling on TDC for several months or weeks or years even, or and surrounding agencies like Brampton, Mississauga, York, for example, to look at going cashless. I mean, no more cash on the buses, no more cash on streetcars, just presto, as well as no legacy fare media should be accepted. Maybe they should speak with these agencies because it's safer for drivers out there, it's safer for passengers, because it's safer, it's just improved safety and allow all-door boarding, as well as implementing POP or proof of purchase with hiring of more fare enforcement officers. And also that's number one. Number two, transit agencies across the Greater Toronto Hamilton area should allow kids under 12 to ride free all year. Not just TDC, but Mississauga, Brampton, York, Durham. I believe UPX is free already for kids 12 and under. But I just want to look at these two things. So before I go, one thing, number one, everyone in the room is cashless transit systems. I mean, no more cash on buses, no more cash on streetcars. I mean, no more cash on transit vehicles other than from variety stores or from on-made fare vending machines, transit stations, subway stations. And number two, allowing kids under 12 to ride for free. What do you think, everybody? Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'll answer the first question and then I'll pass it over. So great point. Getting cash off vehicles is in fact something that globally a lot of areas, agencies are trying to do. It's a question that most of the transit agencies that are on the Presto system are talking about, discussing. It's important to note that there are a large segment of, or a small but important segment of people for whom getting a card sometimes can be prohibitive, and so we have to look at the kind of breadth of policies that include access geographically as well as financially for people to have cards, and that's something that each transit agency is both discussing and we're trying to harmonize. That said, we assume that it'll be some time before any one of our agencies would go completely cashless. It's something that globally tends to be wanted because cash is expensive, and to your point, there can be customer service as well as safety issues that go with folks dealing with cash and dealing with customers and fare enforcement. That said, it's not something that we can push, but we're encouraging to give options to. And I am handing over to...
Yeah, so good to see you again.
Yeah, but I just want to mention, because you know, like Lunch England has already gone cashless. Have you heard of that? They don't accept cash in their buses, and I want transit agencies in the GTA to follow suit in the future.
Thank you very much. And as Annalise says, we'll keep on considering that, and it depends on sort of in the community how many people will...
I mean, no coins, no bills on paying to the driver, no more fare box, just rip up the whole fare box and only accept the Presto card. As well as launching like limited use cards, you have to buy before you board. Like
we appreciate that. Can we just sort of circle on that again? Is we keep on talking to the agencies about that, and I think the idea is an excellent one. So, and it has huge benefits for our own employees as well, not to have to manage cash, and it's safer as well.
Or stores, because drivers can be distracted. I just forgot to mention it's distraction by drivers. And with paper transfers, they shouldn't have to look at that. They can get rid of paper transfers, since there'll be no more cash bears, tokens, tickets, or anything put into the fare box. Just remove the whole fare box and only going to electronic card readers. Just make it entirely electronic, all fares.
It is a great idea. Would you like me to do the second question?
Yes.
The second question is
On the 12, right?
yeah, that we have trialed that on the Barry line, and it's exactly as you say. It's very friendly to families, and the trial on the Barry line has been immensely successful. So it's a great idea, and I think we're close to a stage of thinking about what to do next. So both ideas are really spot on, and it's part of what we are doing currently, and sort of watch the space.
Thanks for your questions. They're terrific, and we've got my colleagues. Annalise would be happy to spend some time with you after. But I'm going to take the next question from the audience. Thanks very much.
Awesome, thanks. Good evening. I just have two questions. I'll try to be really quick. My name is Kumsa. I do a lot of community work, specifically along the Eglinton West Corridor. As you know, Eglinton project is well underway. Talking to residents, sort of the two main things that I've heard a lot is jobs. So we know that there's been some sort of community benefit job commitments for the construction side of things, but folks are wondering, is that something that can be possibly put on for the operations of the line? The second thing is also the impacts on businesses. So we know a lot of businesses along Eglinton have struggled. What is the work that Metrolinx is doing to engage those local businesses to mitigate some of the impacts that construction has had? And just going back to my job question, is that something also that you're looking to expand as Metrolinx grows?
Good evening, Kumsa. So I'll respond to the last one, and then Jamie will take the first two. And so yes, what we've done with community engagement and the type of commitment that we have signed up with the Crosstown company that's delivering the Eglinton Crosstown is exactly the strategy that we're following on all of our large capital projects going forward. That level of local engagement is crucial to the success of a project. So yes, we're heading on with that, and we've been very public about it. That has a huge impact. And we've done great work with businesses, and Jamie will talk you through that.
Yeah, so just on the first, it's a little bit per metrics in that. So Crosslinks Transit Solutions has hired a number of people from the local community, continues to bring on a number of folks from the local community, and fully 1/3 of their permanent workforce is from what we call historically disadvantaged and equity-seeking groups in Toronto. So that's a real positive development that's Crosslinks has made. With respect to businesses, we recognize when you're building an infrastructure project the size of the Crosstown, it does have a significant impact on the local communities, and in particular the local businesses, and we're really, really sensitive to that. So we work really closely both with the businesses themselves, the business improvement areas, the City of Toronto, all the sort of stakeholders to sort of how do we mitigate the impacts of construction as best as possible when we're doing work. So we've got community offices that where my staff are out there talking to folks all the time, making sure they know the construction that's coming, how they can work with them. We've also not only the impact and the mitigation side of things, we also have got a very robust business support program, which we call Experience Eglinton, where we're providing across the corridor advertising supports and really encouraging folks within the local community to recognize that despite the fact that there's a lot of construction going on, that there's a lot of vibrant businesses still along Eglinton, some of which are now suffering, but that they deserve support, and people should be prepared and really keenly interested in shopping locally to sort of help their neighbor out. So we're really working towards on the two fronts, both the mitigation side plus the support side. Great, thank you. Next question from, I'm going to continue rolling a little bit from the audience, if that's fine.
Yeah, let's do the audience.
Yes, ma'am, come on.
Sorry, otherwise you're going to wait too long.
Yep.
Hello, hi.
Hello.
My name's Chantel. I'm an Innisfil resident. I have to commute up to the only accessible train station. Sorry, am I speaking loud enough?
Is the mic off?
Oh, it shouldn't be.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
There we go. Thanks,
Speak into it.
Chantal.
Okay. So I'm an Innisfil resident. I have to commute up to the only accessible train station, which is in Barrie South GO Station, the Barrie South GO Station. Recently, a lot of us commuting into Toronto have noticed that the customer service agents are being forced to work outside in frigid temperatures and whatever may come afterwards, after the season is over, with heat and all of that. So regardless, rain, sleet, snow, all Presto and ticket sales are outdoors only. So the only time we can go inside is to rectify an issue with our Presto card or with refunds and such. The other issue regarding safety and convenience would be the tap stations that we have at the Barrie South GO Station. There are only 3, one on either end of the station and one in front of the building, which is somewhat inconvenient because you have to run around the building to get to the train and hope that the customer service agent on board the train will hold the doors for you so that you can get on board. Someone did slip and fall, from what I heard yesterday, on fresh snow, trying to run to the train after tapping. The other issue that I would like to bring to your attention is coordinating the bus schedules along the Barrie line, especially tonight when I have to take the train up to Bradford GO Station. There won't be a bus like for another hour to connect with that train. So it would be nice to have something there, especially during the winter months because it is a lot colder. Yes, we do have indoor shelter, but it's not enough. So what I'd like to ask is, have you considered the risks to weather exposure for employees and passengers, having to reload and make purchases at the machines outside, despite the fact that it's also been discussed that there might be machines placed indoors, but that won't be accessible throughout all hours of the day? And have you considered the issues that could arise with faulty machines? With that being said, will you also introduce more tap stations at along the platform to minimize risk of injury and lack of convenience and accessibility? And yeah,
some great questions there. Great. Who'd like to?
I'll take the first one. I think it was the first one on station attendants and deployment of them. For Barrie South, you're absolutely right. We are increasingly asking the station attendants to be outside more to deliver more customer service to the customers. So the general approach being to get from behind the counter because we do have self-serve capability at that station. Generally, that fits into the broader strategy, which is we would like to move to the point where we have self-serve across our system, and we up our customer service game in terms of having sort of roving station attendants talking to customers, giving directions, providing help where required. So that kind of fits with that strategy. Just recently, the Barrie South issue came up, and I know my station's team is taking a look at whether we should deploy, at least for the winter, inside. But long term, I'm sharing with you that there is a self-serve strategy that will keep people from behind the counters.
Maybe I could add, yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessary to have somebody standing outside saying, "Can you go and use the machine? I can't help you."
Yeah. So can I just add to what Greg is talking about, the shift to the self-serve. So we have a condition where our stations, which is legacy from a different type and design and physical sort of structures that is not designed for the future of where we want the system to be. So we're in the process right now of re-examining the stations and the footprint and how they actually function, because now with a different level of service and a different type of offering, a lot of our stations, the older ones in particular, were pre-Presto design, pre-a-lot design, and so we're now re-examining where to really think through the customer journey in through the building, is it being very customer centric in terms of where we're placing not just the Presto machines or all the other facilities and amenities that are part of a station. So they go together because the structure and the design can complement or not complement the direction of the kind of service we want. And we're in this transition stage where we're trying to have the designs catch up with the direction we want for the customers. So what you're describing is the is a true mismatch, and that's in the program that we're going right now, is to really re-examine that and kind of better address exactly the issues that you're talking about.
Thanks for that. I'm going to take two last questions. I'm cognizant of the time. Sorry about that, folks. We're going to take the last two questions from the room, but Mike and others that are waiting in line, certainly staff will be on hand to take questions after it. So, sir?
Hi there. My name is Seth. I live in Toronto now, but I'm originally from Kitchener, and I still make that trip fairly regularly. So I want to talk to you about corridor buses. So I know that RER in the long term is going to be the solution that Metrolinx is looking toward, train expansion, and I'm sure you love answering questions about the Kitchener line especially. We've seen a few of those tonight. But in the meantime, buses are the reality for most of the week, the service week, and especially for the ends of the routes where two-way all-day service isn't expected to reach for a long time, buses are going to be the reality for the foreseeable future. And so that's what we have to work with, really. And sharing some of my own experiences from Kitchener, or from making that commute, it can take up to 3 hours to go from Union to Kitchener one way. That's a journey of less than 100 kilometers. So that's a really slow average travel time. And that's because you have to make a transfer at square one. And your options for making that transfer are either a 5-minute connection time or a 35-minute connection time. The 5-minute connection time is not feasible normally because of traffic fluctuations, on the Gardiner, what have you. And also, I'll say this, the other perspective is I'm an able-bodied person. You know what I mean? Sometimes I've had to ask the driver to phone the bus to hold, and I have 30 seconds to sprint the length of the Square One terminal. I can do that because I'm 25 years old and I don't have I don't use a mobility aid, but a lot of people just can't do that. And also, some of those transfers, those 35-minute transfers, for instance, can happen well after dark, after the Square One terminal has closed. And so the other perspective I come at that from is I'm male. It doesn't matter if I have to stand generally outside in the cold and the dark at night with no attendant around me. So other people, again, don't have that sort of, privilege, really, that I do, to take that kind of situation for granted. So I want to ask questions about how that quality of service, whether you think that is really acceptable in the long term going forward. And also just a question about corridor buses in general, how you provide service on them. Because if you're saying that these corridors are important enough to receive rail service, then why does the bus service degrade so much when rail isn't running? It just doesn't make sense to me. Especially, I'm going to use Kitchener as an example because that's what I know. But other corridors is the same, Barrie, what have you. Why we don't either have a one-seat ride from one end of the corridor to the other end of the corridor? Why do we have to transfer in the middle? And also, why aren't the corridors that are running leveraged better? Like, let's say Lakeshore West. Why don't the Kitchener buses, instead of just ending at Square One, why don't they go to Port Credit, for instance? So you can make a rail connection.
I think we got a lot of great stuff there. Can we take a run at some of the answers there?
Sure.
Yeah, there's a few questions there. So let's talk about the Kitchener bus service. So we've added some express bus service in the last year, and that was to sort of be a precursor to rail service. As you've heard already, there's a big focus on getting rail service on the Kitchener corridor all the way to Kitchener. We have some inherent infrastructure challenges before we can do that, but you're absolutely right. Even the rail schedule from Kitchener to Union is 2 hours and 5 minutes, and that's unacceptable. But we have one track between Georgetown and Kitchener until we get two, and we have to do some other upgrades to improve speed. We need to knock some time off that schedule as well. The bus service, that's a very busy highway that we run across, as you would well know. Being the 401, we worked with MTO and we added some bus lanes to one side of that. So so that would be sort of the high occupancy vehicle equivalent. So we can get buses moving faster. But other than that, you are limited to the speed of the highway itself. Your question in terms of connecting at square one, that is, we cannot give everybody point-to-point service. Square one is a hub for us. We have a number of those across the GTA. A lot of buses go in, a lot of buses go out, and that's how we kind of plan the cycling of the buses. There is an efficiency piece that we do aim for. We don't do that, hopefully, at the compromising customer service. It is actually with the customer service in mind, but it's trying to optimize the two. So I think I've covered some of your questions, but tell me the ones I haven't. I'll do my best to answer those.
But we can do that after the
or we can do that after.
Why don't we do that? We've hit her a lot of time, but I did commit to, we'll take one last question very quickly, sir. If you can ask a quick question and we'll get a quick answer, or do...
Two-parter, is that okay?
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
work.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll connect with you after. Okay.
Thanks, Seth. We'll give you more discussion afterwards.
Okay, hi there. My name is Ryan. I'm a student. I'm a tenant in Toronto, and I'm part of the Danforth Village Community Association. I'm not here on their behalf, but the reason why I bring them up is because we had a discussion in our neighborhood about a month and a half back, maybe 2 months back, called Housing in Focus, because we wanted to have a community discussion with community members in the Danforth Village and elsewhere in Toronto, a discussion on affordability, because as you're probably aware, there are major affordability challenges for people in the city of Toronto, people that aspire to live here as well from elsewhere in the GTA. We had a discussion and kind of formulating strategies. We talked about inclusionary zoning, and part of the discussion that we had at my particular table was, kind of addressing external factors that affect affordability. And in that vein, I would think that Metrolinx, being in charge of regional planning, sort of have a direct or indirect impact on affordability. The central reason why I'm here tonight is because I've been reading the newspapers, I've been watching the news. There's talk of further expansion of transit infrastructure outside of Toronto. And it would appear that it is continuing this trend of suburban sprawl and kind of, the reason why it's so unaffordable in Toronto is because people want to live here. Everything is accessible. You have that local integration. You can work, you can live, you can play. Everything's right near you. And the further out you go, the less of that you see. And it just seems like we're just continuing that trend of bottlenecking. And I'm wondering if that is, because you mentioned the business case for transit development. I'm wondering if the economic impact that it has, particularly on affordability, if that is a material consideration. The second part of my question is, and forgive me for being kind of ignorant on this, but I would think that Metrolinx, I don't know if you guys are the creatures of statute, if you know what I mean, if you guys have a delegated authority, even if it's insofar as providing that independent advice to the province. I would think on its face that you guys have a public interest mandate, and I'm wondering if, in providing advice to the province, if considering the economic impacts, particularly on affordability, if that is a material consideration in the discharge of your public interest mandate.
Thank you very much.
Let me try, because those are important questions that you ask. So first of all, the issue of congestion and versus sprawl and infill in the downtown versus more development outside. The challenge for us is that 110,000 people a year come to this region. And if we concentrated 110,000 people a year only in the city of Toronto, it would be a very challenging thing. So that's number one. The transit is part of the solution in terms of how we are able to grow. And there is, the growth plan has legislation about the idea of a polycentric region with centers, with density and so forth. And so that's what we are working towards. The question of geography. So The geography that you're referring to, which is what was referred to in the economic statement and in the proposed amendments to our legislation, is actually the GO service area already. So in terms of more transit, GO is already servicing that geography. It was outside of the GTHA. Kitchener, Peterborough, Niagara, that's our service area. So it better reflects our service area. On the question of what I would call equity and affordability and the role of transit in addressing those kinds of issues, as Phil talked earlier about, the center of gravity of what we do is in transit. We understand and appreciate the impact it has on issues like housing and affordability, but in the end, we are not experts in that area, and so we provide and we do the work with that being in the center, understanding and working with other organizations, ministries and agencies to help them inform their policies and their directions, both municipal and provincial. So it is more of a collaborative effort that has to be undertaken to address some of the issues that are much broader beyond our mandate, but we understand and appreciate that we can play a part to address some of those issues. And go Danforth Village, because that's my home.
I'll just pick up on the second half of your question. Both questions very thoughtful. Appreciate that. Thank you, and very thoughtful. If you go back to Steve's question, which was similar, and that was sort of policy level decision making and then based on mandate and what our mandate is. There's a Metrolinx Act, and the Metrolinx Act defines our accountabilities, our responsibilities, also defines our responsibilities relative to our shareholder, which is government. And so the policy choices government makes drives significantly what we do and what we can do, the budget we've got. And without being frivolous about it, I'll give you an example. There are some transit agencies in different parts of the world that have, for reasons that's got to do with the mobility of communities, decided not to charge any fares for experimental purposes in the one case I'm aware of. And so choices such as that are being considered at least. Do you follow? So. And then there's an economic return and there's an economic benefit for society, and that's a choice the shareholder who funds us can make or cannot make. So I'm not suggesting that that's the outcome. I just want to give you an example of the extremes to which policy experimentation can happen in different jurisdictions. So things like that have been trialed. But our Metrolinx Act defines what we do, and we therefore act within that the confines of that act, and its policymakers make the decisions on how we achieve our objectives. So I hope that covers both your questions.
I think it does. Thank you.
And we'll tie up with you afterwards as well.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you for the question. Folks, that formally concludes this evening's town hall. I want to thank you again on behalf of my colleagues for joining us here this evening. Your views, your comments on our services and our projects are most welcome, and keep them coming. We do have a commitment, as I said at the outset, to answer all the questions that we received both this evening and well over 200 we received online. We'll have those answered and posted online within the next couple of weeks. So thank you again for coming, and please get home safely.
Thank you very much.